What's up, guys? This is Taking the Field with Stevie Mac, episode 33 of the podcast. I'm your host, Stephen MacDonald, and by now you guys all know the guy joining me for this episode. He's known as PLL Updates on Twitter, but we call him Phil Rothermich. Phil, how's it going?
Doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I love being here. It's always a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun to talk some lacrosse and get other people's thoughts and opinions on it as well. So we love having you again. We'd love to have guys like Jordan Johnson back on in a future episode if we can get him on possibly later this week. But since we've got you here for this one, let's kind of go through this group stage here as we just got done playing game number 14, that 14th and final game of that group play stage in the PLL Championship Series, and kind of get some of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one, the Whip Snakes are the Whip Snakes, right? Yeah. We all knew they were going to be unbelievable. The Archers, we all saw them being lights out, especially on the offensive end as well. So, a couple non-surprises there. As far as Chrome goes, I felt like they were going to do great this year. I don't know if I thought they would do this good, but I thought they would do really well. All they needed was, I hate to say it because I think Dom Starsia is a legend, but I think they just needed a different coach that was going to bring a little bit of a more modern approach to it.
Yeah.
The Redwoods, I thought might do a little better, but in hindsight, they lost Landis, who's probably their top cover defenseman. The Beast retired, which was their number one face-off guy. And they had Jules Henningberg couldn't make the tournament. Yep. So that's a huge chunk at every phase of the game, right? That's big. So that's, honestly, after considering that, they're doing better than I had even thought.
Absolutely.
Water Dogs, I think, should be about 2-2 with all their talent, but obviously took a little bit of time for that revenge tour to get going, but they got to win. And I think they're a phenomenal team. It obviously is just taking time for them to put a full game together. That's where they lost it. They always started hot, but they couldn't quite lock it down, right?
Yeah.
And then Atlas, I consider to be probably the most disappointing team of the whole thing.
Yeah.
They have got unbelievable talent, right? Eric Law is unbelievable. Rob Pennell, Ryan Brown, you got Costa Beal, you got Romar Dennis, you got Paul Rabel, you got Trevor Baptiste, you got Tucker Durkin, Van Rappaport. I mean, I can just sit here and name all day long of the talent they have.
Yep. And
they got a new coach, and they just, I don't know what it is. It just, it baffles me. That's why I say they're the most disappointing team, because I can't figure it out. I don't know. And then, along with the most disappointing team, of course, is the Chaos going 0-4. When last year they had the best record in the PLL going into the playoffs. But I think the Chaos have a tendency to start hot, and that gas runs out.
Right.
So we saw it last year. Best record in the PLL. They get to the playoffs. They only have to win 1 out of 2 games to make it to the championship. They lose both of those games. And then we get here to the championship series. They look great, and then they can't get to the finish line. And they look great, and they can't get there. And the biggest killer for me is that Blaze has over 20 saves in 3 straight games. Over 20 saves. And they can't finish. You gotta feel for Blaze a little bit in that instance, right?
Right. So yeah, just kind of going down the line of some of the things that you had to say about each of these teams. I know for me specifically, I'm an Atlas fan. And it definitely was interesting watching some of their games and just seeing some of the struggles that they had really on both ends of the field. And with Trevor Baptiste at faceoff not really being up to the standard that we held him at after last season and the way he performed that year. But really, for me, the disappointing thing, like you kind of mentioned, was on offense with all these different shooters and things that we've talked about here on the podcast numerous times. And I've said it all week long that they just never really seemed like they could figure out a way to kind of put it all together. And I think that for me, and I've said it a few episodes back, that one of the biggest reasons that it seemed like they had trouble was that they didn't really get their midfield involved like we kind of expected them to. And I think a lot of that had to go with the fact that one of their best feeders in the midfield with Joel Tinney was stuck playing defense for almost all four of the games, almost exclusively on defense. And to this very moment, I'm still kind of scratching my head at that decision, but I have to believe that there was some sort of analytics involved there or something that justifies that decision by the Atlas coaching staff. And then kind of going back with some of your other things that you talked about with some of the other clubs with the Redwoods, I mean, you mentioned it. They lost three key guys at three key positions across the field. And the fact that they were able to kind of come together and finish 2-2 in that group stage to me was probably one of the bigger things from a team standpoint from the group stage. And then just with other teams like the Whipsnakes, like we said off the air, it's actually kind of crazy that they almost look like they got better from what they were last year, which nobody really thought was even possible for them, but they somehow managed to do it. And I think that a big reason why was because of the fact that Jim Stagnita opted to save many of those defensive guys to carry over to this season and then just decided that they were going to retool the offense. And really, the offense almost looks better this year because of the fact that it doesn't just stick with Rambo a lot of times. He's able to then get guys like Zed Williams, Brad Smith, Jay Carlson, the list goes on. He's able to get those guys involved, and we saw it today against the Archers with those ridiculous 8 assists that he had.
It's so insane. It's so insane. And the thing about the Whipsnakes is they keep their goalie. Brindler's unbelievable. They keep their whole defense, a championship-winning defense, unbelievable. They've got, at this point, I would say, the best face-off guy in the world in Nardella. And not only that, I would put him in the MVP running. You know, he has just been a force, unstoppable. So then you get to the attack, and you think, well, they lost Drenner and, you know, so on and so forth. And then they pick up Zed Williams. And at the beginning of the year, I remember thinking, I can't wait to see how Zed plays. I'm going to be really interested to see this dynamic. And my friend over at Top Shelf Lacrosse, he had talked to Stagnita about that whole thing. And old Jim Stagnita there said that Zed was going to make Rambo better. And
I guess he wasn't wrong.
Thinking, right, I was like, oh yeah, okay, he's gonna make the MVP better, okay. And now here we are. It's unbelievable. You gotta be kidding me, right?
Right.
And of course, like you said, the Archers didn't get the W. My Twitter followers voted for me to wear the Archers today. I think there's a lot of disappointed people in the world right now with that game.
Yeah, and it's funny because I also have, for the sake of the podcast, been doing the picks challenge with me facing off against the people of Twitter to see who was going to win each matchup during the pool play. And I was actually really surprised that the polls actually picked the Archers for this game. I mean, it's justifiable with the way that their offense has been playing with guys like Ament leading the league in points as a rookie, which is ridiculous. But I was just really surprised with the way that we've seen the Whipsnakes play up until this game. And they even outdid themselves in this game as well at times. But I was just really surprised that the Twitter polls didn't have them in this game, which they rightfully should have.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Archers is they have this offense. I call them the Four Horsemen, right? Yeah. With Will Manny, Marcus Holman, Schreiber, and Ament. The thing that is really interesting to me right now is that Holman, I don't know if he's snake bitten or what, he just has not quite been there this year. I think he has 3 goals on the year, which is crazy because last year we all saw Marcus Holman going off, right?
Right.
But this year it's like he just hasn't been that factor to be there. Will Manny's done well. Schreiber's been Tom Schreiber, right? Yeah. But Pullman is that missing piece, and Grant Ament has kind of picked up the slack there for him. But still, with what we were hoping for, I feel like we're missing a little bit of a piece of that. And then, they're going up against one of, if not the best defense in the league, which is, I mean, what are you going to do?
Right.
That's unfair. And then as far as who was going to win, early on, I projected a lot of different things, but I didn't know that the Whipsnakes would go 4-0. I thought they're great, they're lights out, but once you win a championship, it's incredibly hard to go back and win it again, right? But the Whipsnakes have, like you said, somehow created an even better offense. Everything is clicking for that team. They have dominated each and every game, and this Archers game was their first, what I would consider their first real test. I mean, Atlas hadn't been doing well. Water Dogs haven't done well. I think their other game might have been against Chaos, I think. But either way, another team that hadn't performed up to what we had hoped for. So this was it. This was the first big matchup. I'm sitting here thinking, well, they've won the last by 5 goals and such like that. That's impressive wins. Let's see when they play someone real. And I'm telling you, man, not only did they have a dominating win, they had a statement win. The rest of the league should be on high alert, man. High alert.
Yeah, you just said it with that statement win. That absolutely wasn't. I was even sitting there watching it, and I just thought to myself, this is a preview of the championship game next Sunday. I mean, these two teams are by far above anybody else the 2 best teams in the league, and we're going to see them playing again 1 week from today in that championship game. Or else it's just something's going to have to happen in the postseason for that not to be the case.